US President Donald Trump has lashed out at the leader of Syria over an alleged chemical attack. RT's Alexei Yaroshevsky reports on how Washington's attitude towards Assad is shifting.
A chemical attack that was so horrific. These heinous actions by the Assad regime cannot be tolerated.
He spoke a lot about the situation in Syria. Again, we have not seen any conclusive evidence that the gas attack in Idlib province has been performed by Assad's troops. Nonetheless, Donald Trump was pretty confident that the Syrian government carried out the attack. And he also indicated that what happened in Syria has been a game changer for him. Let's listen.
My attitude toward Syria and Assad has changed very much. And if you look back over the last few weeks, there were other attacks using gas. You're now talking about a whole different level.
Just a reminder that over the past weeks, in fact, almost a month, the overall tone coming from Washington regarding Syria, regarding President Assad, had been somewhat different.
With respect to Assad, I mean, there is a political reality that we have to accept.
I think the status and the longer term status of President Assad will be decided by the Syrian people.
So obviously the big talk of the town right now is whether the Washington's policy towards Syria, towards Assad, would change and go back to what it was under Obama.
The regime of Bashar al-Assad must come to an end.
Assad has to go.
It's time for Assad to get out of the way.
It is time for Bashar to go.
Assad needs to go.
So Trump also said that this attack crossed many lines for him, as he put it, not just a red line, but many lines. And he was pressed by journalists whether he would take any concrete action, but he was coy and said that he would not reveal his plans. Nonetheless, again, the talk of the town is that the policy towards Syria may change over the coming days.
The Trump statement comes after reports of a chemical strike in Syria's Idlib province. This video you can see now claims to show the aftermath, although we cannot verify its authenticity at this stage. Syrian forces were immediately accused of carrying out that strike, despite the lack of any proof. The UN High Representative for Disarmament Affairs has said the details of the alleged assault cannot be confirmed. But that hasn't stopped the accusations in the UN Security Council, as RT's Kelly Morpin explains.
Reports have stated that the attack was carried out through an airstrike on a residential area. However, the means of delivery of the alleged attack cannot be definitely confirmed at this stage.
Now, you might have thought that with nothing being confirmed and the allegations still unproven and no investigation taking place, that it would not yet be the time to take such things to the UN Security Council. But if you thought that, you would be wrong. The tone of the United Nations Security Council was very heated. U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley, representing the new Trump administration, took to the floor and repeated the allegation that the Syrian government was responsible for chemical attacks, and from there went on to make a threat of unilateral action against Syria outside of the United Nations.
When the United Nations consistently fails in its duty to act collectively, there are times in the life of states that we are compelled to take our own action.
The UK ambassador representing the United Kingdom, and when he spoke, he accused Russia and China of essentially enabling the Syrian government by vetoing previous resolutions regarding chemical weapons.
On the 28th of February, we could have sent a clear message that day. A clear signal that there would be consequences for using these horrific weapons. But after Russia and China vetoed, it seems that the only message sent to Assad was one of encouragement. And yesterday, we saw the consequences of those vetoes.
You better give an account of what the UK does in terms of regulating the situation in Syria. And you ask questions from Russia and China. Do you have some kind of responsibility? No. And it's all come from an obsession about regime change. Let's talk about the genesis of the problem. The dividing line in history of toxic chemicals use in Syria and then full toxic warfare were so-called red lines initiated by the previous US administration, and the crossing of which would lead to military intervention in the Syrian conflict.
Now, the words that are really ringing in everyone's ears are the words about unilateral action from Nikki Haley. Now, we know that when previous administrations talked about unilateral action, they were using this as a euphemism for an impending military attack, invasion, or strike. Now, it's not clear what Nikki Haley and the new Trump administration meant by it, but the words that were exchanged, they're certainly quite serious.
Joshua Landis, who's director of the Center for Middle East Studies at the University of Oklahoma, joins me on the line now. Very good evening to you, Joshua. And we heard a comment just a few moments ago from Nikki Haley at the United Nations. It was hinting at unilateral action from the US. Do you think that's a genuine threat?
I do. I think it is a genuine threat. President Trump is really facing the last administration's red line that it drew on the use of chemical weapons, which was really quite successful because President Assad did not use nerve gas or nerve agents for 3 years after the 2013 red line was drawn, and he delivered weapons to American ships where they were incinerated. Now, clearly, Trump is up against it. He's being tested here. And he's going back to his generals to see what the options are. Undoubtedly, he's communicating with Russia, too, to see where Russia stands on this, what Russia might be able to do.
At this stage, can we accept that the Assad regime did carry out this attack deliberately? Even the UN's High Representative for Disarmament Affairs has said they have no details of the assault. Russia's put forward a resolution calling for an independent investigation. Do you think we will see that passed or not?
I think there will be an investigation, but it's quite clear that the headwinds in the West are gathering. It'll be very hard to stop them at this point. President Trump says he's reevaluating. He's going back to his generals. This may require him to act in some decisive way, sooner than he may want to, but also the public opinion is going to develop, and this news story is not going away.
What are we seeing here, though? Are we seeing talk based on the opinions of experts? Have they seen some evidence that hasn't been released yet? A very big decision seems to be being made, but we're not seeing the basis upon which they're being made.
Well, you're correct. There isn't been a real investigation. There are a lot of people calling for caution. Of course, Russia has said that this is not the regime that has carried it out. President Assad and his people have denied it, and they say this is fake news. So there are two sides of this story, and we've seen fake news before. The problem is that the people who's looking at the video say there's 40 different clips. They're looking at it. This is consistent with nerve agents. It would be very difficult to fake it. And that's the real question at hand here is, can this just end up in a long committee that searches it? And that's a political question that President Trump is probably asking himself today. Can this be finessed, or does he need to take some firm action?
Now, we heard just recently the Pentagon saying that it's no longer going to disclose information on troop deployments in Syria and Iraq. So if they do intervene in Syria, just how much will we even know about that?
Well, clearly the bar has been changing pretty radically on the ISIS question. And much of this will depend on how the battle goes in Raqqa in the attack on ISIS. If it goes slowly, too slowly, if there are reversals, if ISIS is stronger than people think, the United States wants to be able to move troops in freely on a day-to-day basis without having to make big announcements about troop changes. And clearly, this is a drip-drip situation. It could escalate. And so there's been a lot of statements about not putting boots on the ground and so forth, which are clearly slipping away. And there's a murky question about, will the United States keep troops in Syria for the long term in order to police Raqqa and other areas of the Euphrates Valley that will be conquered and taken back from ISIS? Or will it leave them quickly and allow the Kurdish troops the Assad's military to retake those territories. We don't know what the answer to that is yet.
How surprised are you? I know that this was an horrific attack by all accounts, but how surprised are you at the willingness politically to do this, what seems to be a 180, a U-turn? We had Rex Tillerson just days ago saying, do you know what, the US is pretty much leaving Assad alone. If the people of Syria want Assad, that's up to them. And now suddenly we're hearing this very, very aggressive rhetoric coming from the US. Was that a very big decision to take, to make such a change of direction?
Well, it is, but you see, President Trump has been trying to move away from regime change, and he has tried to suggest that strong men are appropriate and better for the Middle East than regime change, that he criticized both the Clinton administration and the Bush administration, Obama and the Bush administration, and said these wars of regime change are stupid wars. That's what he called them. They have sown chaos, they have worsened human rights violations, and now we have radical Islamic groups running around Libya, Yemen, Iraq, Syria, where there weren't any before. And this is because of destroying central states. So he said strong men are the answer. And in that sense, his policy was beginning to ally with Russia's. But here is a strong man, Assad, challenging him by using chemical weapons in a way that America had drawn this red line. Obama, the one thing Obama did that was clear was draw that red line, no use of chemical weapons. Assad has tested this, we believe, if it turns out that he has used these chemical weapons. And this, of course, throws the ball into Trump's camp. This is the first major foreign policy challenge that has come tumbling onto his head. And he has claimed to be stronger than Obama. He criticized Obama. And this is a question of strength. And now he's put it in those terms. He's framed it as, I have to do something. It's my problem now. And so in a sense, he's drawn he has drawn a red line. He said that there are multiple red lines being crossed, and that gets him stuck in the same problem that President Obama was stuck in.
Joshua, many thanks for joining us this evening on RT. Joshua Landis, Director of the Center for Middle East Studies at the University of Oklahoma. Thank you.
Regime cannot be tolerated.
He spoke a lot about the situation in Syria. Again, we have not seen any conclusive evidence that the gas attack in Idlib province has been performed by Assad's troops. Nonetheless, Donald Trump was pretty confident that the Syrian
US President Donald Trump has lashed out at the leader of Syria over an alleged chemical attack. RT's Alexei Yaroshevsky reports on how Washington's attitude towards Assad is shifting.
A chemical attack that was so horrific. These heinous actions by the Assad.
To Assad, I mean, there is a political reality that we have to accept.
I think the status and the longer term status of President Assad will be decided by the Syrian people.
So obviously the big talk of the town right now is whether the Syrian government carried out the attack. And he also indicated that what happened in Syria has been a game changer for him. Let's listen.
My attitude toward Syria and Assad has changed very much. And if you look back over the last few weeks, there were other attacks using gas. You're now talking about a whole different level.
Just a reminder that over the past weeks, in fact, almost a month, the overall tone coming from Washington regarding Syria, regarding President Assad, had been somewhat different.
With respect